Lesson 10, American Government, State and Local Government. This lesson explains some of the different structures and functions of state and local government and how they compare to the federal government. The lesson is divided into two sections. State and Local Government, Section 1. We will now begin the first section of Lesson 10. The U.S. Constitution sets up the government, defines the government, and protects basic rights of Americans. More specifically, the Constitution sets up a federal system of government. The U.S. federal system of government has a central government at the top and state and local governments below. A federal system creates a broader government that encourages experimentation and keeps the government close to the people. As just mentioned, the United States has three levels of government: federal, state, and local. The federal government is the government in Washington, D.C. As part of its responsibilities, the federal government deals with foreign governments and national issues, creates and enforces federal laws, and upholds the Constitution. In this way, what the federal government does affects all 50 states. Below the federal government are 50 individual state governments. State governments have many of the same powers and responsibilities as the federal government, except a state government's power is limited to that state. Lastly, to further broaden the government, below the 50 state governments are more than 89,000 local governments of several different types. In the United States, federal and state governments have some of the same powers, such as collecting taxes, establishing courts, and making and enforcing laws. Other powers, though, belong to either the state or federal government. Under the U.S. Constitution, some powers granted to the federal government are the ability to print money, create an army, declare war, and make treaties. While the Constitution gives certain powers to the federal government that states do not have, to protect both individual and states' rights, the 10th Amendment in the Bill of Rights states that any powers not expressly given to the federal government belong to the states or to the people. Some powers that expressly belong to the states include the power to provide schooling and education, provide protection, and provide safety. Protection is police, and safety means fire departments. States also give a driver's license and improve zoning and land use. Zoning determines how land can be used, the type of buildings that can be built on it, and for what purposes. This is the end of Section 1. We will now practice the related civics questions. Question 2. What does the Constitution do? It sets up the government. The Constitution sets up the government, defines the government, and protects basic rights of Americans. Question 4. What is an amendment? A change or addition to the Constitution. An amendment is a change or addition to the Constitution. Question 5. What do we call the first 10 amendments to the Constitution? The Bill of Rights. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution are called the Bill of Rights. Question 41. Under our Constitution, some powers belong to the federal government. What is one power of the federal government? To print money. One power of the federal government is to print money. Some other powers that belong to the federal government are the powers to declare war, create an army, and to make treaties. Question 42. Under our Constitution, some powers belong to the states. What is one power of the states? To give a driver's license. One power of the states is to give a driver's license. Some other powers of the states are to provide schooling and education, provide protection, provide safety, give a driver's license, and approve zoning and land use. State and local government, Section 2. We will now begin the second section of Lesson 10. Like the United States, every state has a constitution that sets up and defines its government. While there are many differences between state constitutions, all 50 state governments have the same three branches as the federal government: a legislative, an executive, and a judicial. In every state except Nebraska, the legislative branch consists of a House of Representatives and a Senate. In contrast, Nebraska only has one House of Congress. In Connecticut, the state legislature is called the General Assembly, and its job is to make state laws. Connecticut's General Assembly has 36 senators and 151 representatives. Both senators and representatives represent districts that contain an equal number of citizens. All senators and representatives in Connecticut serve 2-year terms and have no term limits. The leader of the state's executive branch and head of the state government is the governor. Connecticut's executive branch consists of a governor and 5 elected executive officers. A governor has similar powers to the president. As head of the state executive, a governor leads the state's executive branch, proposes legislation, signs bills into law, enforces state laws, and commands the state's National Guard. Like a president, governors can also veto bills. However, the Connecticut governor can also use what is called a line item veto. A line item veto allows the governor to reject any part of a bill without vetoing the whole bill. In 48 states, including Connecticut, governors serve 4-year terms. In Vermont and New Hampshire, they serve 2-year terms. Connecticut is also one of 14 states that have no term limits for governors. However, so far, no Connecticut governor has been elected more than 2 times. In addition to the governor, the executive branch in Connecticut includes a lieutenant governor, a treasurer, a secretary of state, a controller, and an attorney general. The lieutenant governor is like the vice president. The lieutenant governor is president of the Senate and becomes governor should the governor no longer be able to serve. The treasurer is like a banker and manages all the money the state receives. The Secretary of State is responsible for state elections and all public records. The controller is like an accountant and manages the state's budget and writes financial reports. The Attorney General is the state's chief legal advisor and chief law enforcement officer. Like the president and vice president, the governor and lieutenant governor are elected together. However, in Connecticut, other members of the executive branch are not appointed by the governor. Instead, they are separately elected at the same time as the governor. This means members of Connecticut's executive branch sometimes belong to different political parties. Like the governor, members of the state executive serve 4-year terms. This is the current governor of Connecticut. The governor's name is at the bottom of the picture. along with the governor's political party and year that the governor was elected. If asked who the governor of your state is, you may answer with the full name or just the last name. The judicial branch is the state court system. State courts are independent from federal courts, although the two systems are connected. Like the federal courts, all state courts have a highest court, usually called the state Supreme Court. Below the state's top court are a series of lower courts. Appellate courts are courts of appeal, and superior courts hear the most serious cases, including trial cases. Under the superior courts are special courts that deal with minor cases in more specific areas such as juvenile crime, family matters, and traffic violations. Connecticut's highest court is the Connecticut Supreme Court. Unlike the U.S. Supreme Court, which has 9 justices, the Connecticut Supreme Court has 7 justices, including 1 Chief Justice. In a system similar to the federal selection of justices, Supreme Court justices in Connecticut are appointed by the governor but must be approved by the General Assembly. Connecticut justices have no term limit but must retire when they turn 70 years old. The 2 major political parties in the United States are the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The elephant is the symbol of the Republican Party, and the donkey represents the Democratic Party. Since 1857, only 1 Connecticut governor has not been either a Democrat or Republican. Besides the 2 major parties, there are other political parties as well. These are called third parties. Voters and politicians can also choose to be an independent, which means he or she doesn't belong to any political party. For almost all of its history, the United States has had only 2 major political parties, although the parties and policies have differed over time. Regardless of which 2 parties they were, they have always been the most successful in elections, particularly national elections. However, there have always been third parties as well. While less influential in national elections, third parties often have more influence in local government. Third parties are important to the political system because they often bring new ideas and policies into national politics. Abolition, women's voting rights, child labor laws, the 40-hour work week, and Social Security were all ideas originally promoted by third parties. In 2020, there were 52 third parties in the United States. Currently, the largest third parties are the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, and the Constitution Party. The Libertarian Party believes in very limited federal government. The most radical form would be a government that only provides police, prisons, courts, and the military. The Green Party promotes grassroots democracy, social justice, nonviolence, and environmentalism. The Constitution Party wants greater power given to the states and a federal government guided by a strict interpretation of the Constitution. The capital of Connecticut is Hartford. However, at one time, Connecticut had 2 capitals, Hartford and New Haven. Every 2 years, the government moved from one city to the other. However, as Connecticut and its government grew, this arrangement became too inefficient. So in 1873, a referendum was held to choose which city would be made the state's permanent capital. Hartford won the referendum, and in 1879, the current state capitol building was completed. Below each state government are numerous local governments. The structure and function of local governments vary depending upon the state. However, the local governments have many of the same powers as federal and state government, such as the power to make laws and to collect taxes, More importantly, local governments also provide services like schooling and education, police and fire departments, trash collection, street lighting, road maintenance, and voter registration. Connecticut, like other states in New England, does not have county governments. Instead, local government is based on cities, towns, and boroughs. Cities and towns are equal under state law, while a borough is part of a town and therefore not fully independent. In Connecticut, cities are governed by a mayor and city council. Towns are run by either a mayor, first selectman, or town manager, plus some sort of council. In most Connecticut towns, legislative work is conducted through a town meeting. This is a form of direct democracy, which allows citizens to directly express their views and vote on proposals. Most town governments in Connecticut have 4-year terms. This is the end of Section 2. We will now practice the related civics questions. Question 13. Name one branch or part of the government. The legislative. The legislative is one branch of the government. The 3 branches of the government are the legislative, which is also called Congress, the executive, also known as the president, and the judicial, or the courts. Question 43. Who is the governor of your state now? This slide is a picture of the current governor of Connecticut. If asked who the governor of your state is, you may use the governor's full name or just the last name. Question 44. What is the capital of your state? Hartford. The capital of Connecticut is Hartford. Question 45. What are the 2 major political parties in the United States? The Democratic and Republican parties. The 2 major political parties in the United States are the Democratic and Republican parties. This is the end of Lesson 10.